Welcome to the Invocation podcast. We bring critical thinking and intelligence to you in an incredibly unintelligent way. Who was right for the Mojave? That's right, we're talking about the game Fallout New Vegas, and which of the mighty tribes should end up taking the Mojave Wasteland in the end. Welcome to the...
It takes place in the future, though. Should it be who will be?
Whomst will be.
Whomst.
Welcome to the Invocation podcast. And this episode of the Invocation, we are talking about who is right for the Mojave. I'm Ignatius, the world's top 14-year-old philosopher, and this is my good friend Johnny Truitt, though you might know him better by his online handle, Jaden Smith.
Starts in 10 minutes, folks.
Yeah.
No.
So, how was your day today?
It's good. It's good. Let's see. Went to the gym. Spent 8 hours in
Purgatory?
solitary prayer, you know. Let's see.
Close enough to purgatory, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, no. Today was good. No, not a lot going on. Weighed myself, getting slimmer by the second.
Is this because of Metabolife?
Yeah, no, that makes me get bigger. Thank you, Metabolife.
Alright. So, we are talking today about the game Fallout New Vegas, and who is right to take the Mojave Wasteland in the end. So, for those of you who haven't played this game, little backstory on the Fallout universe. There was a big resource war. The main players were China and the United States, and the escalation of events eventually led to a nuclear apocalypse, bombs dropping on both sides. We don't really know what happened in other countries, so parts of Europe and maybe Africa and South America, maybe bombs dropped there, maybe they didn't. What we do know is the United States is now basically a nuclear wasteland. Major cities have fallen, they've crumbled. A lot of the population had disappeared into big underground vaults to come out 25, 50, maybe 100 years later. This game takes place about 200 years after that nuclear apocalypse, when the tribes of men are just starting to get back on their feet. They're just starting to put infrastructure back into place. Major manufacturing facilities and being able to create farms and move items, move trade goods long distances. So
I got a hot take.
Go for your hot take
on why we don't know what happened to South America and Africa and Europe.
Is it because they don't exist in the Fallout universe?
I was going to say because literally you're the first person ever to even ask, which means no one cared to ask, which means they didn't write it, which means if you're going less meta, that means that no one bothered to bomb them or even call them to tell them what was going on.
Or maybe it's like the orc psychic field theory, that because they believe something exists, it does. Nobody believes those places exist, so they do not.
I guess. Well, you get Raul, the lovable ghoul, from Mexico.
Yeah. So we know Mexico exists. We know Canada exists because the United States had annexed them at some point before the nuclear apocalypse.
Yep. And China, of course.
Yeah, we know China exists. Yeah, and I'm sure they mentioned some other countries at some point somewhere in the games, but I'll be damned if I'm going to read all that.
Surprised you didn't go for the theory that the Metro series and the Fallout series are in the same universe. One's like kind of funny, you know, and the other one's like really dark and serious.
Do you think they're in the same universe?
I had to sell my kids for ammo and then use the ammo to shoot the people who bought my kids to get them back. Now I have kids and no ammo.
Alright. Anyway, there's 4 major factions in the Mojave Wasteland as you play it. The factions are the New California Republic, Caesar's Legion, I guess, I don't know if this is a faction or not, a single man named Mr. House, and then there's a robot named Yes Man, and he's, I guess he just follows your orders. So whoever you as the player character are, you are the 4th major faction if you don't support one of the other 3.
Hey, to be a faction, all you need is an army, man. I mean,
Yeah,
else has got that, or you have it.
yeah, or the NCR, but not the Legion. They don't have an army.
No, I meant the army of robots.
Oh, yeah, there is that.
You're right. They don't have that either. But
So each of these factions has some strengths and weaknesses, some different backstory. For example, the New California Republic was founded when a bunch of the tribes that arose from the ashes of the wasteland got together and decided to form another central government, something that if we all work together, we would have stronger goals, or I guess a stronger outer presence. We'd be able to pull our resources, create
you
defense.
get to play some of that in Fallout 1 and 2.
Yeah.
The building of that.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with those stories. I do know a little bit about how they were founded and who the original president and stuff like that was, but...
Well, one takes place in Shady Sands, which becomes the hub, I think.
That eventually becomes the capital of the NCR, the New California Republic.
Shady Sands is supposed to be Palm Springs?
I don't know. Some of them just... I think Shady Sands, sprouted up around where Vault 15 was. So it's just, hey, this is kind of a convenient location because we're near our vault. We're near where all our resources are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I don't know actually where it corresponds to in terms of real-world locations. So the New California Republic is, I would say, the closest to what we have in modern-day America. They have a president. They have, I believe they have a Senate and Congress of some sort that has representatives from each area.
Oh yeah, sorry, representatives.
And they get together, decide on matters, create new laws, stuff like that. People are taxed, and those taxes go towards a common good. The next, I would say, really big faction in the Mojave Wasteland would be Caesar's Legion. Caesar's Legion was founded by Joshua Graham, who became the kind of second in command of the armies, basically. And then, what was Caesar's original name? Do you remember?
Edward. No. God, I almost said Edward Cullen. That's
Edward
not right.
Scissorhands.
No. God, I'm gonna think of it later too. You know.
Anyway,
no,
the leader of the Caesar's Legion is, of course, Caesar, and he fashioned this entire thing after the old Roman Empire. And they very much believe in
missionary turned conqueror.
Yeah, they very much believe in take what you can by force. If you have the strength to do it, you should. They practice slavery. They give the tribes of the wasteland that they encounter a choice: either join us or die. And if they do not join them, then they are decimated completely.
Yeah, practice total war.
Yeah. And the next faction for this would be, I guess, Robert Houses, Mr. Houses. And he was some genius billionaire before the wars happened. Before the war happened, the Great War. And he found a way to preserve his body long term. So he's still alive after 200 years. He's just stuck in this this capsule that feeds him and changes his diapers and all sorts of fun stuff. And he's able to command his presence via his robots that he designed before the war. So he has several of these robots patrolling the strip, making sure the Las Vegas strip, and making sure that peace is kept. He found a way to control some of the other tribes in the Mojave Wasteland, saying, if you support me, you have access to these casinos, and you can make lots of money for this. You just need to pay tribute to me, basically.
Yeah, the character of him is based off of Howard Hughes, but instead of airplanes, robots, and he actually just never came out of his penthouse.
Yeah. He kind of reminds me of
Tony
Tony Stark.
Walt Disney. Oh, yeah, maybe that.
So,
I guess, Tony Stark, maybe a little bit of Elon Musk with the rockets.
Yeah. So, very, very, very modern. No, it's not the word I'm looking for. Very very Tony Stark-like character. He's just supposedly this great genius, and he has a lot of money to throw around at problems. And his big issue right now is he needs to upgrade his robots, and most of the force is hidden off somewhere that he can't access because he doesn't have working legs, I guess.
I always felt that he could have been. They could have written him way more eccentric than they did. You figure out, some guy who's talked to no one in 200 years. I mean, imprisoned in pretty much of a coffin, and they could have made him way, way more eccentric. They could have really cranked up the Howard Hughes element of that, but they didn't bother doing that. And I think he comes off as like a Walt Disney Mr. Rogers, So, and they might have done that out of convenience, like, hey, everybody knows what Walt Disney looks like. Let's make him look kind of like Walt Disney. We've heard Walt Disney speak, let's make him, sound kind of congenial like that. I like what they did with the character. It's not like I think they could have. What I was trying to say is they could have flubbed it pretty bad, and they didn't.
Well, I mean, maybe his kind of cockiness comes off maybe because of that. Like, hey, look what I did for the last 200 years, and I survived, and despite all the odds.
Yeah, no, definitely. He's definitely. I would say full of himself, but you can only be full of yourself if it's undeserved, I guess. Yeah. He doesn't make any boasts that he can't back up.
His mouth ain't writing checks that his body can't cash. I mean, other bodies that he's designed and built. Yes.
What they say about Frank, Oh no, not Frank, but Farnsworth, It's like swanky townhouses, speedboats,
hot
sexy
girls.
ladies,
Yeah,
hot girls. Hubert Farnsworth designed them all.
I think he had those female companions as well. The robots with the female personalities.
Yeah, he had them brain scanned.
Yeah, so I imagine he had those to talk to as well. So he didn't go completely mad. He had someone that was at least conversational with him.
I like that they made them two kind of like a little bit like dumb bimbos,
Yeah.
But at the same time, they played on that trope of like, hey, it's a robot girl, so she's like, ha ha ha, whatever,
Yeah.
And they played on that a little bit, just enough so you're kind of wondering like, how intelligent is this? Is this because of the limited resources with storage space, or is this just the kind of company he kept?
Yeah.
So that was actually pretty clever.
A few of the other characters that you talked to actually mentioned that was kind of the company that he kept. And maybe it was to feel superior.
Yeah, a little bit of a character flaw there. Surround yourself with be a big fish in a small snow globe, as it were.
Yeah. And then finally we get to the last faction that a lot of people call it the faction of Yes Man or Independent Vegas. Yes Man is a robot that you encounter at some point during the course of gameplay. And due to some of the events, he ends up following your orders. So if you wanted to have an independent New Vegas, one that I guess you control, which would make it far from independent. I don't know why people call it independent New Vegas, but
well, you can. I don't know, like the no gods, no masters kind of thing. You can make it restrictive or free you want.
Yeah.
He even says, like, get to know some of the factions. It's like if you like them, leave them alone. Or if you don't like them, or if they're going to be a problem, go ahead and exterminate them. The voice actor they got for that, I don't remember his name. I'm bad with the names today, but he plays a bank robber on a movie called Employee of the Month. Really good voice actor, and they like thinking back, they couldn't have gotten anybody else to do that because it's just perfect how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you haven't played the game, you guys should go play it.
The guy sounds like a Claptrap from Borderlands.
Oh, don't make that comparison.
It's Claptrap, dude. Greetings, minion. Do you think Claptrap was the eventual evolutionary path for Yes Man?
No, I no. I don't put that game on the same like league as this game. I'm not a fan of Borderlands, but like Borderlands is centered around the only part of like a good game, Dead Island. The only part I didn't like, which is like the leveling system, like the grind leveling system. Like, oh, this
I
could have
heard
been
you can
so
get
like.
through all of Dead Island without leveling up once, because then none of the zombies level up.
I believe it. I totally believe it. Like, just loot stuff, sell stuff, get better weapons, and then just have an amazingly OP weapon by the end. You probably could do that.
And like 10 hit points.
Like, there are better. I mean, we can digress a little bit into how games get how they deal with you leveling and leveling system. There's a bunch of ways to do it. You can make the opponents more numerous, or you can make them have better equipment. You can like go the full whatever, and make them use different tactics. Like actually, the AI, like on an easier difficulty.
Oh. I lost you, man.
Sorry, how about
that? Yeah.
We're
back.
Right. Okay. So there's ways to make AI better, in a game, or not make it, but make the difficulty kind of go up your level, make leveling like rewarding, but at the same time keep the challenge up, kind of thing. And like there's ways to make that easy, or ways to make that like actually make a good game. You can make the enemies more numerous, give them better equipment, which is a lot of times what New Vegas will do. Mm-hmm. They'll be like, okay, you're going to face this many guys in this part, but if you're past this certain level, they're going to have better armor and better weapons, and you better watch out, thing. You can make the enemies more numerous. You can make them use different like AI tactics, so you can be, hey, maybe on this difficulty they won't use grenades, or this difficulty they won't use these team tactics, or they won't ever appear behind you because of this kind of thing. And Dead Island like did like the easiest way possible. I literally just gave them like more damage and more hit points and made them look exactly the same. And there's probably like I picture like a one-line script,
mm-hmm.
If player level is this, increase, if player level is X, the hit points and damage are base Y plus X kind of thing. It's like
really you just have during the spawn system when they spawn in, it's just player like zombie hit points equal player level times whatever.
Yeah, and I don't know. Anybody who's ever designed a game or even like looked at like pen and paper, like D20 system kind of games, know that doesn't make an interesting campaign. It makes a grind. Like I don't know how many times you'd grind in Dead Island and you'd save up and you'd get a weapon, and then literally 5 minutes later, because you got leveling up, this weapon you bought is not very effective, and you find a better one on the ground. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's the thing they could have done better. Everything else about Dead Island was cool. I thought the rest of the game was cool. The exploration, it's open ended, it's or open world rather, which I guess is par for the course now.
Yeah, every game is open world.
Far Cry was
even
zombies.
Mario. Mario's open world.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
The latest one, Mario Odyssey, is fairly open world. Like you go to different places, but it I don't know. I guess it's like a slightly more open-ended Mario 64.
Oh, okay.
So they like to travel to different areas. You have to go on a ship and kind of travel around the world or whatever. But once you're in that area, you have like complete control of where you go.
Oh, so.
Uh-oh. We'll lost you again.
Said, so Wind Waker.
Something going on with your mic?
Nope. How about now?
Yeah, it's fine, but I can kind of hear when you lose connection because
it's really easy to just with a gesture put this thing on mute. It's happening like yesterday too.
Is it like motion control or something like that?
No, it's just a little little toggle switch.
All right.
Cats broke the other. They managed to break a headset, believe it or not.
Classic cats. That's better than my last headphones. Fucking chair ran over them, snapped them in half.
Oof.
And so Steve, being the cool guy he was, printed me a headphone stand. So now I'm like, hey, this got to go on this headphone stand right here. So it doesn't get snapped in half again. All right. So, where were we talking about the leveling systems?
Grab the factions.
Yeah, the 4 factions of the Mojave Wasteland. And I guess before we get into who is best for the Mojave, I guess we should decide what constitutes the best. Like, why would we choose this faction over another? Like, what does it mean they're best? You know, like, is it long-term human survival, or is it quality of life for
the minimization
living?
of entropy is the only moral choice.
We can get at that moral philosophy at some point, I guess. But what do you think is why would a faction be good for the Mojave? Why would they be right for the Mojave?
I'd like to say first that the reason we can have this discussion is because of the tapestry that the writers put into this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if it was just a, hey, red faction, blue faction, you know, or like, I mean, if it was written any more poorly, you know, this would be like, hey, really binary kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You got to think about what they're working with. It's easy to, and I think this might be by design. It's easy to look at the game and say, okay, you know, not just because some of these people are wearing, you know, like Roman legionary outfits. Picture this story as a piece of history. So you're picturing a piece of history, you know, and by doing so, you maybe remove yourself from the modern. You know, context means a lot. People don't think a lot of stuff like, and I'm not certain the game gets into that, you know, but something as simple as, hey, you know, my character grabs this weapon, you know, and shoots someone. You don't know what you would do in that situation, though. Whether you'd freeze, fight, flight, you know, it's usually one of those 3 responses.
Yeah.
Hardwired into us. So, even a decision as simple as that, we don't know unless we're there. So I just wanted to preface that the lens, we're going to try to get around this, but the lens we're looking through this question is through lens of our time. And our time, different place. A different time, but a very different place. I mean, I'm geographically, you know, it's right near me, and pretty near you, too, but it's a different... It's a different lens. It's a different lens, you know. So it's easy to say, like, oh, well, you know, this is most like what I know, or hey, this has this faction here minimizes the suffering of these people, kind of thing. It's very easy to try to apply today's
standards and morals and
values, kind of thing. But if you look throughout history, you could never do that without just casting all the figures like, oh well, I mean, like say you're, I mean, it would probably be pretty easy for, say, someone from, so like a 19th century Protestant, you know, to look back at the Greek heroes. It's like, well, you know, it's like, I guess what he did was moral, but then again, you know, he's, you know, they're all gay and they're all sleeping with each other, kind of thing. And like, well, you know, that wasn't that consideration, you know, wasn't made back then, kind of thing. Like, oh, Alexander the Great, you know, is doing his buddies in the booties. Like, well, yeah, you know, that's what they were doing then. You know, your lens,
that's what made you great.
The lens you look through, I was trying to say, the lens you look through things with is always going to be framed by your frame of minds. I butchered that, but hopefully the audience can get what I'm saying here.
So, I think I understand what you're saying too. Is that we only have our life experiences and how we were raised and stuff like that to make the decisions in a game that allegedly takes place 250 years from now and in a completely different context from what we have today.
Yep. And at the same time, one other thing is, I know I've gone through a game, maybe not the first time, but you go through the game, you're like, okay, I'm going to do what's fun and do this, whatever, and then maybe you play through the game again, saying, okay, I'm going to do what makes sense for my character.
Yeah.
Well, who is my character? Well, it's kind of open-ended here. You're a courier, so you're used to less than minimum wage, and walking all the time. So, I mean, besides that, it's kind of open-ended, So you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do what makes sense for
whatever backstory that you gave.
Yeah, whatever backstory it is, kind of thing. And people that are familiar with D20 systems, you play D&D, you'll see, okay, well, I'm writing a backstory for this character. I know this character, especially if this character has any base alignment. They're going to try to act like that. It makes for a better experience. You're less meta, which is important, But for these purposes, we're going to try to view it from maybe our personal lenses.
Mm-hmm.
So
as if we were magically transported to this Mojave Wasteland.
So the question you asked is what makes a faction moral, Well, in the second part, that begs the question, well, what is moral for the Mojave, There are actors in charge of the factions, or in charge of the factions as they are here. Maybe not the president of the NCR, he makes an appearance, but he's not the one commanding the forces there. You could say Caesar's in direct control of his forces, unless the story makes him die, in which case you'd still fight his general, the legate. And Mr. House, if he's alive, he's in charge of his forces. So we want to say, what is moral from them? Well, they're acting from... None of them are making a compromise. Mr. House is too proud, so is Caesar. The NCR are in a position where they can't compromise. They're like, hey, we need this, and we have to do this kind of thing. We're going to do what we need to win. So they're all acting in interest one. So we can infer from that they're not compromising. So we'll say the actors are doing what they feel is right.
All right. So that's
we can go to that a little bit deeper. I don't know. Do you want to talk about going to House a little more, or the NCR a little more, and I'll go into some of the. I mean, this. I don't want to dig too deep in philosophy as far as this, but you could say how you can maybe talk about how Mr. House is. I mean, essentially an ANCAP.
Yeah.
Like, hey, property rights, hippity hoppity, get out of my casino, kind of thing.
Get out of my entire Vegas Strip.
Yeah. Caesar's very much, you'd say, autocratic, nationalistic. You can say just a warlord. You can say fascist. The NCR are very much expansionist. I think maybe they're more. Their uniforms model after an earlier, a later period of maybe like almost like French Foreign Legion, because they're in the desert. I don't know what they look like back at the. It's never shown what NCR dress uniform is, but they look. But I think they are modeled maybe more after earlier colonists. They have. I mean, despite there being technology, the word still travels slow. So I see this as like, hey, to me, the NCR harkens to kind of like the expansion, maybe the battle for the Alamo, sort of. We have settlers who are the locals of the Mojave, Then we have troops, Union troops from pushing west, kind of thing. They seem to be more like a 19th century, an early 19th century America kind of expansion force. Do you see any of that, or
the NCR does seem fairly imperialistic, if I bring that.
Yeah,
and yeah, definitely expansionist, kind of like early post-revolution America. How we went through our expansionist phases, rather, going from the original 13 colonies, 13 states to what we have now. And
the NCR is they you're right, they don't compromise on how they expand. They expand their territory outwards. Any towns or settlements that are within that territory, they say, you join us. That's it. You have no say in the matter. We can provide you protection and stuff like that.
I don't know if they just don't try to justify it, and are kind of like backhanded about it, or if they're like Caesar, where they don't try to justify it and they're very upfront about it.
Well, I don't think they put in such a brutal terms. They have their propaganda machines going, and definitely they say, we could provide protection, we could provide resources that you might be lacking in a quicker manner, and all you have to do is sign here on the dot and pay taxes.
Yeah, but it's eminent domain, hey, it's gonna be better for you, if you just sign here, but if you don't, we're still gonna take it, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, you can fight this, but you'll only get homeless tired, instead of being homeless, like, with the clothes on your back, kind of thing.
The Mexican American War.
And we should say that's nothing. That's not counting any corruption. There's a lot of in the because hey, our public face, and I might be kind of selling them short because unlike when you meet Caesar or you meet House, there's everyone from the NCR who is NCR that you meet that has an interest in taking like the Mojave, they're all soldiers. Even the high-ranking ones. Yeah. They say we have to win. They don't say why. They, for the most part, don't really care about the inhabitants. But then again, these are soldiers. You get jaded after a while. Someone who's been in Vietnam for 8 years, in the middle of Vietnam, wants to win and probably doesn't care about the locals as much as some fresh-faced ideologue, straight from boot camp kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I can forgive a little bit of that, and it wouldn't make sense. You get Ambassador Crocker, and he gives a little bit of exposition, but not much. He is mostly about him, and mostly like, hey, we need to take this because orders from up says we need to take this.
Yeah. They was talking about the generals leading them and stuff like that, and I think you meet one of those generals, and he's basically got orders from back home, from the Senate or from the president or whatever.
Yep.
It's like, we're doing this because, that's what the NCR wants. That's what the NCR needs. We need to take this territory. For whatever reason.
It's kind of faceless. It's kind of faceless. The president is the face of it, but at the same time, it's kind of faceless. There's a vying for. There's very much a hint of I don't know, we call it deep state. But it's, it's lobbyists and it's, land barons.
Yeah.
Land barons. That's one of the reasons also why it sounds more like colonial, like the colonial American army. At the behest of, if there was, I don't know if we believe in the corruption of the original colonial army, but if you read things like oh God. The first American corporation was the Virginia Trading Company,
mm-hmm.
I think. I don't know. It was, and they're pretty much just like, then you read about the Banana Republics and Dole, and just like the brutal expansion, pretty much their own private armies just to go out, stuff. And what I was saying, one of the reasons it seems more like colonial American army is because it was the agrarian, and then the Industrial Revolution happened. And then the industry lords were the rich ones, and then next it was the tech. Now you get the Jeff Bezos, the Bill Gates, all of them. So that's why it seems more. It's more agrarian, seems more colonial army kind.
All right, we are back.
Right.
We were talking about the New California Republic, and I guess. Just getting a little more into their faction before we decide who the hell is right for the Mojave Wasteland. So, did you have anything to add for the NCR?
I'll probably touch on them a little bit again when we talk about Caesar's relationship with the NCR, and we'll probably talk about it again. They'll come up again when we talk about House's relationship with the NCR. I almost want to discount the independent Vegas because it's literally, I mean, you can do whatever you want. You can get by independent Vegas by only killing and I guess the Leggett.
Hey, yeah.
I mean, I think like we don't have to kill Leggett. You can convince him to leave. So, literally, the only person you have to kill, steal their chip from, and go from there.
It seems like independent Vegas or following Yes Man or whatever is kind of just what you make of it. Is however you want to roleplay it.
Yeah. I don't know why they put that in there per se. I guess we're talking about independent Vegas. I don't know why they put that in there per se. Maybe, well, I mean, obviously, if you there are only two characters in the game you cannot kill, and that is Yes and the other robot that digs you out of the grave, Victor, and that's only because they respawn. They even like work that into the lore. They're like, hey, I can't actually be killed, I can be put inside of any Securitron.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Oh, just a little bit of meta talking. That was kind of a way if you closed off every other faction some way by killing a major player in their faction or whatever. Basically, you couldn't follow that faction for whatever reason. Yes Man was kind of the catch-all, so you didn't catch yourself in a dead end. Couldn't play through the rest of the story. I think it had a pretty well written backstory. Here if you want to take control of the Vegas area.
Yeah, quick backstory: the guy that shoots you and takes this chip that Mr. House needs to up his defenses, upgrade his Securitrons, and unlock his army. Some dude kills you for that chip because he has inside knowledge that that's the upgrade in the form of a poker chip that Mr. House needs. He needs that. He tries to shoot you to take it. He takes it. His idea was he reprogrammed one of the Securitrons, give him control of Mr. House's mainframe and his whole army, New Vegas. So you're pretty much taking his role, what his role would have been. It's Ben.
Classic Benny.
We answered so fast it was scary. The whole theater stood up and we screamed, Matthew.
So just something I wanted to add about the New California Republic itself. It seems
very parallel to what we have in the United States today. We do have a system of representatives in the form of Congress, in the form of the Senate, and the form of the President itself. But it does seem
referring to boundless imperialistic expansion.
Yeah, that too. But it seems like very much they do a lot of stuff in the interests of more powerful players in the United States. A lot of people refer to the corporations that contribute a lot to people's campaign funds, stuff like that. And lobbyists. The New California Republic has a similar issue. They call them the cattle baron, and they're just people who are really powerful farmers, or a couple of the more minor players inside the New California Republic who maybe manufacture weapons or other forms of technology, stuff like that, might have a bigger say than the citizens themselves.
And that's literally big ag and the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, that's brought.
I see the parallels
quite a bit through some of the players' dialogue with some of the other characters in there. It's like, yeah, the cattle baron back home have a lot of sway in the NCR. Basically, like taking people's land just so they can grow more cows and stuff like that. And
oh yeah.
So fun times there. That seems that in the expansionist policy seems to be a couple of the downsides of the NCR itself. So let's move on to Caesar's Legion. I know you've been talking a lot about the NCR, but you know a little more about the politics of Caesar's Legion and why they want to expand and their motives behind it and stuff like that. I think you're able to articulate it a little better than I could.
Okay, I'd be delighted to. I don't know about that, but I'll give it my college. All right, so you get
your darndest.
The darndest. So, yeah, we were some of the Legion. I'll start at the beginning. Quick little brief, history. Who Caesar is. I remembered his name, and I was actually right. I Google searched the exact words, came up, Edward Sallow. Edward Sallow was born as a kid. I think he's about 55 or so in when the events of Fallout New Vegas take. He was born there. He had a mother, had a father. They were, I think, subsistence farmers. They were something very. And raiders came and killed his father. And him and his mother managed to escape. They had nothing but the clothes on their backs. They made it to the followers of the apocalypse, kind of like a missionary, maybe like a Peace Corps or a Red Cross kind of minor faction within the NCR. I say within. They're not NCR, but the NCR give them pretty much free reign because all they do is just try to help people. So yeah, maybe less. I was going to say Greenpeace. It's not really Greenpeace. Just trying to help people. They're comprised of doctors, and they're comprised of
scientists,
doctors,
volunteers.
Men of volunteers. But as I mean, today's volunteers, a lot of times come from very privileged backgrounds. Like, hey, I'm going to go volunteer because I don't need to make a living. I suspect, and it was in the case of Edward Sallow, that they probably just take in a lot of people who have nowhere else to go. Mm-hmm. They said, hey, will you give me 3 squares and somewhere to sleep? I'll help you any way I can. So they ended up joining up with the followers. He studied books and and languages, and he was given the job eventually of his interpreter. And he was sent on a mission to go east into the Colorado and Nevada to meet up with a missionary there to meet up with a translator, wasn't it? Joshua Graham originally was a translator. Maybe. I think he was a trader or a missionary there. He was going to meet up with one there, and he went with one other person, and met with someone named Joshua Graham there. He was there with the missionary. He was the translator, and they went there to study the language of the tribes in Mojave. Later, he remarks that was a fool's errand. But we'll get. Before long, there was some kind of bad translation. We're not sure. That those details are kind of sketchy between what Joshua Graham says. He says there's a bad translation, though. They ended up getting captured and as prisoners. I don't know, slaves. They're just prisoners at that point by a tribe known as the Blackfoot. Mm-hmm. And when I say tribe, these are people who, at some point in the 200 years, had their vaults open. And they had... I mean, when a vault opens up, you're pretty much isolated. So you're the second, third, fourth, seventh, or eighth generation been living in this vault alone, and the vault opens up, and you have your society there, and your society somewhat based on just how things evolved and worked, in that vault, and somewhat based on the crazy experiments that Vault-Tec was doing on the people in those vaults. Your vault was unique to you, and that was your tribe. So when I say these are descendants of those who had been freed from a vault. Sometimes they live in the vault. Sometimes their vault was rendered uninhabitable and they left. Sometimes they're nomadic, what have you. So they're captured by a tribe. Blackfoot doesn't say what vault they came from. They might not even know. They could be an amalgam of several other tribes. I know the Native Americans in IR, they were often an amalgamation of other tribes. Mm-hmm. They would get to the tribe, and then they'd beat it in combat, take the women as captives and stuff, and they would become part of that tribe. And there was a lot of that going. and I assume there's a lot of that going on in the Fallout universe. So he gets captured by a tribe, and he calls them pissants, like a crap tribe, you know. He calls them backward savages. We assume they could be, you know, as congenial, face to face as maybe the boomers, you know, or they could be something like the fiends. They're captured by a tribe, and that tribe was besieged by another tribe, and rather than just try to parlay or whatever, you know, or do something else against the wishes of his companion that he came from the followers, he and teaching the tribe. He teaches them how to like use the sights on their weapons, you know, how to maintain their weapons, how to clean them, how to make booby traps, improvised explosives, small unit tactics, things like that. They looked at him like he was like a wizard, but you know, his is just stuff he'd read over the years. You know, it's really happenstance in some ways. How this happened? In some ways not. So he educates the tribe, you know, and they beat their first adversary. You know? By the time he educated them enough, you know, they elect him as their tribal chief. You know, they beat their adversary, and he orders their adversary that was besieging them, the weakest of them, killed to him. This is total war is. He says the tribes before he got there did some play fighting, some raping, some pillaging, some burning and stuff, but he introduced them to...
But not real war.
I mean, yeah, they said they engaged in play fighting, you know, but they didn't know what total war is. And total war, which no doubt he read about in the book, is it's the opposite of civilized war for the time period. When the total war phenomenon came up, there was a lot of armies standing, you know, on line, you know, marching toward each other with rifles, you know. You fire, you know, and then the rank behind you fires, you know, and you go there and you occupy, you know, and your aristocracy makes a deal with the other aristocracy, you know, and everybody, you know, and it's all very civilized and stuff. Well, total war is you go in there and you make the enemy suffer. The idea is for them to capitulate completely or die.
Yeah.
Like, you destroy their resources, you destroy their man, and he took it to the next level, destroying their actual identities. He defeated the first tribe. Next tribe came along. He told them to surrender. They said they rejected that. So he got one of their missionaries and brought him, or one of their scouts, and brought him and showed him what he did. And they capitulated. He had all the adult men, women were enslaved, and the children taken into the tribe to be raised as legionaries. He did that, divide and conquer. He did the next smallest tribe, By the time this came along, he had the missionary he'd come with wanted nothing to do with this. He was Edward Sallow. He named himself Caesar, and he told Sallow to go back to the NCR with a saying, "Don't mess with me out here." By the time the events of New Vegas happened, he has 87 or 86 tribes. I forget.
It's
the largest. It's a lot. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, of troops east of the Colorado River. You know, just rare. I don't know if he always thought this, you know, if he was like a total autist, you know, and just thought this in his head. This is what, or if he was playing by ear. He seemed really just upset. Not that they were captured, but they were captured initially by such a weak, and he says a pissant tribe, you know, just as backwards as the rest of them.
Yeah.
When he got to a new tribe, and he would marry off the females, you know, to people of his tribe. He'd kill the adult males, you know, and erase the tribe's identity. Absolutely. So there was only the Legion. Replace it with a monolithic tribe. He wanted something, an image for his army that was so foreign to anything there, that it would replace their identities. You know, picked, you know, out of books. Julius Gaius Caesar's Roman Legion. You know, the actual and that's what he modeled his Legion after. He
right down to the football guards.
Yeah. Well, I thought about that. They have what's available to them.
Yeah.
Now I don't think some of it's like, okay, he refused at some point to use the robots, but at the same time they used displacer gloves. They're not opposed to using artillery. They're not opposed to getting the boomers to side with them, using their bomber. They're not opposed to using light machine guns. Their veteran legionaries have the. I think a lot of it's more logistics wise.
Hey, can you hold on for just a moment?
Fighting. Yeah.
Go ahead and keep recording. Don't stop.
Okay.
What's up, kiddo?
They're fighting against other tribes. So,
hold on, because this is gonna pick up background audio when I'm talking to George for a little bit. Give me just a moment. What's up?
Sure.
Yeah, that's an eel. Uh-huh.
Is that an eel?
So you have to catch an eel, and that's probably going to be in the ocean. You have to use a fishing line in the ocean. Okay, and that's a quest that you have to complete by the end of the day today. So if you don't have an eel already, I don't know if you're going to be able to catch it. So, I'm still recording, and I need quiet in here. So, can you go downstairs and play? Okay.
Oh, wow, wow, wow.
And can you close the door, please? Let me do it.
Wow.
I want to do it. All right. Okay. So you were discussing the what the Legion was doing, or what they were using.
Yeah, they I think it's kind of like what they had on hand.
Mm-hmm.
They're not so much. I know he says at some point, the revolution, must be fought with blood and sinew,
yeah,
and fists and knives and stuff, But I think it was. That's more like kind of symbolic, He doesn't want to use a lot of robots, but he'll use stuff. And as far as the hockey pads, yeah, they're not good against bullets. But think about an organized military force. He has not fought yet. He's fighting tribals, so they're taking and they're shooting. And when they're out of ammo or when they get a surprise, they're running up, And now, if I'm in hand-to-hand combat with someone, especially if blunt instruments are involved, football and hockey pads aren't the worst thing.
You could do worse for yourself.
You really could. I really could. I mean, like
maybe some nice wolf pelts.
Like if someone, dude. I mean, if someone had something like the enemy has machetes or knives, someone with a knife. They see you in a flanking Kevlar, they're not going to try to aim for your head or your. If they're smart, they're going to aim for the armpit and they're going to aim for the neck, or the stomach. You can't cover everything. Is that going to stop a bullet? No, but I'm thinking maybe what he had on. Maybe they went to ASU, and they're like, "Oh, cool, we got a lot of hockey pads,
yeah,
or we got a lot of football pads, Let's just go,
I'm sure that's where they found it, some high school or college, and like, hey, these things are pretty tough, and they come on and off pretty easy. So
pretty much,
let's do it.
So he I don't know if he was playing a lot of this by ear, or if he had planned it out like I said, like a super autist, meticulously. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this kind of thing. From Joshua Graham, which became his legate or general, which was the missionary from Utah, the Mormon. He seemed to be kind of playing this by ear. They started bringing, as Caesar put it, bringing the torch of enlightenment to the tribes of the East. Like I don't think the followers of Apocalypse thought he would take the torch part so literally. But he, like in Graham's words, it started out as, "Hey, we're civilizing these people who are backwards because he's a missionary, And there are some parallels between that and what a lot of the Spanish missionaries, they'd go, and hey, we're taking over this tribe kind of thing, you guys are backwards, you're speaking this language now, everybody's in the same. Those who fight us, are going to suffer for it, and for Graham, it sounds like, because Graham professes to be a moral person, we're not going to get into who Joshua Graham was in this podcast, on this episode, but he said it just kind of got away from him. He didn't like, in hindsight, he didn't like who he was when he was doing that.
Yeah.
But on some level, he thought he was bringing civilization to the Mojave. And I don't believe that it's all because he was scared of what Caesar would do, said no kind of thing. I think it's more of, at some point or on some level, they are still bringing civilization to the backwards. Mm-hmm. Caesar's philosophy is autocratic. He is father, he is God, he's the general, he's the king, all rolled. And some of that, maybe narcissistic. But I mean, if you're a narcissist, and just want to, or maybe like a hedonist, hey, I have this army of slaves, I'm going to rest on my laurels here, kind of thing. But he actually, I think his expansion was twofold. One, he actually believes what he says. This is, hey, this conflict is inevitable. We're expanding. We want New Vegas to know it's an actual fortified city for a Rome proper. Mm-hmm. From like his namesake crossed Gaul, he's crossed the Rubicon. He was going to cross Colorado and take. Part of it, I think, is what he actually says. Slate was reset. We somewhat technologically, but definitely culturally, society's culture was reset back to zero in effect. Mm-hmm. The tribes of the east, he says, these were it was enslavement of them was a blessing for them. They're backwards and they had no dignity and no honor. So he took away their drugs. He took away their whatever else they were doing, and give them purpose and focus, and loyalty to a cause. He says the NCR in his mind is different. They are already established. They're just diametrically opposed. He's an autocrat. They are a democracy. He says democracy is weak. If you want to see what a democracy looks like, look out and look at the wastes. So this is what democracy leads to. Democracy is not fit to rule. So the NCR was stronger under President Tandy, which she was reelected. I don't know, like every time for like 50 years or something.
She's a popular broad, right?
And then a successor was her daughter or son or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know, but says that was it functioned best when it was an autocracy. This is not going to work. We need something. We need a militaristic, autocratic force, and that's the only thing that can withstand the trials of a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah,
and in some ways, he's got to be right. Like, hey, this small, it's beset by raiders or mutants or the wildlife, whatever, or there's a chance they can perish. But if they are an asset, if they are an arm, a body part, as it were, they would have strength in. The second part, which I think I have not heard anybody else make this connection. It's maybe just something I maybe just barking up the wrong tree. But he emphasizes President Tandy, and he also emphasizes the NCR's inability to protect its citizens. Mm-hmm. Now, if you recall, he gives away that his father was killed by raiders, and his mother and him had to. She was his protector early on, mm-hmm. just like Tandy was the NCR's protector early on. They broke away from that, and he broke away from her when he became an adult. That's probably linked somewhere into how he treats the women in the Legion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone in the Legion are slaves, but the women in the Legion are the lowest of slaves. They are, if I don't know, if you roll everyone's rights back equally, like men and women, women are going to come up lower on the totem pole. Like start in 1950 and just roll everybody back, to the medieval times or earlier, the Bronze Age. It's kind of like that. Women are proud. They respect their husband and they do work and they do menial work. They do sewing, cooking. They do breeding. So I think there's some kind of, at the risk of sounding Freudian, some kind of link between the NCR's inability to protect his family from the raider, where his father's killed and his mother is almost taken and has to flee, and his saying that the NCR is not strong enough, not up to the challenges of a post-apocalyptic world. Mm-hmm. That and that they're making the same. You might have. I spent a lot of time researching on this, because they are, despite their crazy garb, they're a pretty believable faction. I can believe that this, without too much suspension of disbelief, I can believe that a warlord would emerge like this. Yeah. He gets into things like Hegelian dialectics, and synthesis and antithesis. If his force is rising, throughout history, it's shown that an equal and opposite reaction social, and that would be the NCR. He believed the Battle of Hoover Dam, when they take it, change the NCR by absorbing them and enslaving them and stuff, but it'll also change his Legion. They'll go from a synthesis there. They'll go from a largely nomadic war host to a functional republic. Now, maybe not republic, but a functional stationary autocracy.
Yeah.
With something like Rome as its capital in New Vegas.
An actual empire with a seat of power somewhere.
Yeah. And a military force to defend its. Now, will society look a lot like the Legion does? Probably. They don't go into that. Which is.
All right. So the last major player that we're going to be discussing here is the Mr. House himself, a single person with lofty goals and big ideas, and or at least that's what he claims. So Mr. House has found a way to keep himself alive for 200 years and would probably be longer if not for the events that happened during the game. At some point, if you align with any other faction, you need to kill Mr. House. There's no way around it. He thinks very highly of himself, and for good cause. He's done a lot of big things in the world. He created big multi-billion-dollar companies and had contracts with the United States military and all sorts of fun things. And he is aiming to put himself in the seat of power in the Mojave area. He did several things that he kind of deserved this seat of power. He helped defend the Mojave area from the nuclear strikes. He shot down most of the nukes before they were able to hit land and strike. And he has managed to put several tribes into power as sort of his lieutenants, in order to bring some semblance of peace and order to the Las Vegas Strip itself. He's an incredibly intelligent man. He I think personally oversaw the development of several of the robotic systems that you see across every Fallout game. They were developed by him. The computer systems, the Robco terminals were developed by him, by his companies. And there's probably some other things that I'm forgetting as well.
Well, they ended up acquiring
the tool company too, right? Well,
that was something that he left for his brother, his brother got everything like in the will, which was pretty much the tool.
Mm-hmm.
He left that for his brother, and finally at the very last second, and bought it. Just kind of a fuck you to his brother for screwing him out of the inheritance right there. He acquired that because he was big robotics, but he ended up acquiring and advancing the rocket company too. I can't think of what it is. The one of those ghouls.
Oh yeah, yeah. So some outer space rocket company. So he has some knowledge.
Yeah, that was acquired by
rocketry as well, I guess. There's a lot of parallels there with Elon Musk too, SpaceX.
Yeah,
and I guess AI generation and stuff like that. There's a lot of parallels there. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 50 years Elon Musk figures out some way to Robert House himself.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
And he's aiming to put himself in a seat of power in the Mojave area, and the way he does that is by controlling the Hoover Dam, which is a major source of power, electricity in this area. The NCR needs it. The Legion needs it to a degree, but it seems like they could kind of work without it. They're mostly interested in taking that Hoover Dam in order to
deny it from the NCR.
To deny it from the NCR, yeah, and to get a better foothold in the Mojave itself. From the Hoover Dam, they can deploy their forces a little better, and because that is a big way to get across the Colorado River rather than the single rafts that they've been using for who knows how long. But he seeks to expand his army. He has hundreds, thousands of robots built, but they're laying dormant somewhere. He can't control them without this single piece of hardware, which will upgrade their firmware and allow him to broadcast orders to these robots, basically.
The single plot device.
Yeah, the MacGuffin of the game, if you will.
I don't know. They wrote it in pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean,
any MacGuffin could be
essentially like it's developed here, and SneakerNet has to get it to Las Vegas, kind of thing, and they were just a little bit too late. Mm-hmm. Like 20 hours, I believe. The bombs fell.
Yeah. He's got some lofty goals. During the discussions with him, he's talking about getting manufacturing back in Vegas, and at some point in the next 50 or 100 years, he'll have space travel going again, a space program, and colony ships being sent out to other planets to try to find other places for humans to live that aren't devastated by nuclear war, and just big lofty goals. But he's almost setting him up to be a dictator in this wasteland. It's his rule, his control.
Yeah, he goes into saying that, hey, I have no autocrat works to know, but I have no desire to manage the day-to-day lives of people. I have no desire to be worshipped. Yeah, he says that and stuff, and he says, hey, my infallible, like what'll keep you from becoming corrupt? He's like, well, my infallible will.
Yeah,
and he touches on something really interesting. It's like, okay, at face value, he's the ultimate benevolent dictator, and you don't have to worry about succession because he's supposed to, indefinitely, I suppose, to his life support systems.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's made it to, if he's at, because he was 40 something when the bombs fell.
Yeah, 40, 50.
2077. So he's 50 plus another 200 years, 250. I mean, there's no saying that he's going to stop living anytime soon.
Yeah.
So you get the problem of succession for dictatorships or for monarchs. Like, okay, this king is great and stuff, but is his son or his son's son going to be the same guy, or he's going to be a jerk, and go nuts, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of says, hey, so how we become, how will you keep from becoming corrupt? It's like, oh, my indomitable will. I'm like, well, that sounds kind of like bravado,
I believe the exact word he uses, I'm incorruptible, or something to that effect.
Yes, and the thing is, like, it's kind of ironic, kind of a little like, hey, maybe someone missed that, maybe they didn't, it's like, I'm without character flaws, like, except for being conceited and
Oh no, he's got character flaws. He just doesn't admit to any of them.
Yeah,
he
but
believes
like,
himself.
but he's basing his premise on that. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of clever. The writing in this is really good.
Yeah.
I don't mean the writing like the dialogue, because the dialogue's pretty good.
Which is how each major player presents himself, I guess, and how the story really intertwines with each other. Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, no, it's the actual writing, the actual story is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Certain things could have been fleshed out more, but I realized they were on a time crunch. Not their fault. I think Sawyer did a really great job, like bringing it all together as best he could.
So
now the gameplay, like bugginess, that's another story.
Classic Bethesda.
Could they have worked out the bugs in another 6 months? Maybe. We'll never know. Modders so far have not. And the game is what, 12 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So there's not much more to say about Robert House. A very intelligent, Tony Stark, Elon Musk like person. Had basically worked to make himself a billionaire. He was pretty ruthless and
yeah, almost entirely self-made.
Yeah. And that's so he has the history to back up his claims, I think. And he was just starting to get into rocketry.
If you're arguing from a proprietary standpoint, like, oh yes, well, Vegas, and I defended it should be mine. I guess, yeah. If you're going off a proprietary standpoint, yeah, he's the. But what is ownership? Ownership is the immediate possession coupled with the ability to
yeah.
If someone kills you and no one, like, if I'm on a road trip and I'm traveling across Europe and I've got $500 in cash, and someone kills me and no one, and they grab the $500 in cashier's checks, just because it wasn't just, in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of modern morality, doesn't those $500 in cashier's checks are any less theirs.
Yeah.
I guess cashier's checks is a bad idea because they're supposed to be safe in that aspect. 500 euros, whatever.
IPOs, that's what they call them in Germany.
So it's like, should it be his? Well, yeah. Like, if you look at this contract here, it says I own the whole thing. Like, well, what is your contract if you can't enforce it?
Yeah. And, I believe in the immediate Las Vegas area, he can enforce it. He's got the robots there. And they're not.
Well, that's for the player to decide.
Oh yeah, they're not at peak efficiency. They don't have all the upgrades that he had planned and stuff like that. But he has them. They're there. That's how he's able to enforce his will across the strip. He just can't quite reach his tendrils out across the Mojave in a big way without the rest of the robots and without the software upgrades that they get. And I guess hardware upgrades.
Yeah.
So, those are the major factions. I think we're going to just skip the Free Vegas, the Independent Vegas, Yes Man story for now. Because that is very much what you make of it. You decide who follows you. And
Yes Man is a great character. I highly recommend everybody play it, and do a Yes Man at least once. Because the dialogue he does is hilarious. And it's maniacal. And there's a little twist at the end. He's not completely, totally 100% yes man, There's a little bit of personality, and I don't know if it's by accident or if it kind of emerges on its own, as AI is wont to do over time, I guess. I mean, Securitron's had a programmed, hey, you don't think for yourself, you're pretty much, you have limited intelligence if you're beyond my reach, of Mr. House's reach, Victor is a different story. Victor's the cowboy one that takes you out of there, and he was out of Mr. House's reach, and he acted on pretty much his own limited. But if you just wipe all that clean, I mean, do you put the three laws, into this robot? Obviously not. There's plenty of malfunctioning robots around the Fallout universe, that you have to kill. Yeah. Some of them are just doing their old programming, and some of them are just nuts. But yeah, definitely play it. Definitely play the Independent Vegas, the Yes Man campaign once through. It's good.
But getting to the 3 other factions, so we have the New California Republic, Caesar's Legion, and Mr. House controlling that area. Which one is the best? And I
show. Make your case.
I would probably put if I were teleported to the Mojave Wasteland in my current state, if I survive, I don't have very many survival skills. I'm an okay shooter, and but I couldn't tell you the first thing about maintaining a gun except make sure there's no sand in the slide and stuff like that.
Let's say if you chose to, you could develop those, because your character does.
Yeah.
You can go in any way you want, with your current morals but there's no gameplay stat for morals. There's a stat for what you know.
Yeah. But going in just as I were, and maybe seeing the day-to-day life of the people who live in the Mojave Wasteland, and survival is just way harder than most points in our previous history. It seems like House would be the best track. If we got him in control, there might be some problems with independence and free will that doesn't align with his vision at some point, but it seems like he would be the best bet going forward. He's very knowledgeable, he's very intelligent, he would get these communities going in the right direction, and maybe help develop agriculture so that and infrastructure and stuff like that, so that he can get his goals going, so he can get the space program going, colonizing other planets, stuff like that. And that could be a big car sales pitch. It seems like he's a good salesman, someone who's charismatic and has a way with words to tell the other person what they want to hear in order to get what he wants, what his goals are, whatever that may be. But it seems like going from, even if he had a greedy purpose, I want more control, more money, more power, whatever, going from what we had before the war to what is there after the war, there isn't much more to control now. It's a lot less, actually, and there's a lot of work involved to even get it close to what happened before, or what the United States was before the war. And maybe that is a long-term goal of his, is to put himself into a position of power over an entire country, an entire continent even, where nobody else in the world maybe is doing something similar. He would come out on top, and with a long life, he has the time to do it, and he would have the smarts and he would have the resources to do it. But from a survival standpoint, from the rest of the Mojave Wasteland and possibly the rest of the country, it seems like he would have the know-how and the force of character to make it happen. He would be able to bring manufacturing facilities back online and create more robots to enforce his will across the rest of the wasteland, and would be able to create I think a better life in order for more people to join him on his conquest, or his goals, his visions, whatnot. That's what I think.
Oh,
but I could be pretty wrong about that.
Have you ever read comic books? I'm gonna go ahead and defer to comic books and media, because I'm an atomized 21st century digital boy, and I have no history. It's a Detective Comics, DC Comics. It's a Superman comic called Red Sun.
No, I haven't read very many.
It was long story short, Superman, instead of landing in whatever Smallville, U.S. of A., lands like in Russia. and wrote in the Cold War. And it parallels the Cold War between the U.S. with Lex Luthor as the president and Superman as the premier. Superman's got because Superman is Superman, has the entire world except for the U.S. On the brink, like on the rails, hey, he's gonna win and stuff. And Lex, he has some Superman has some doubts to know whether what he's doing is right, whatever, and Lex Luthor, Superman is warned, don't get in a conversation with Lex Luthor, his intelligence he has an IQ of this, and I predict he could talk you into committing suicide in 14 seconds. So he ends up, Lex Luthor ends up just giving him one note that Superman ends up reading, and Superman's like, oh God, and just leaves, so Lex Luthor didn't do it. And that message was something along the lines of, why don't you just put the whole world in a jar? The idea was that Superman was detached. He was on this world and ruled it, but wasn't of the... Think about Mr. House. Mr. House, let's think about him for a second. He is a man, and he can speak, but he's spoken to no one. Mm-hmm. He is a neckbeard at a hobby store, who has arranged his entire army perfectly, and he has the best strategy because he thought it out. He's got the models all in the right place, because he thought that out too. He's had a long time, and no one wants to be his friend at all. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. Because hear me out here. He is a man, but for all intents and purposes, no one knows if he's a man or not. He's a machine. He is going to jumpstart this technology, this technological revolution, the second revolution, and restart the manufacturing industry, and propel human beings to the stars and stuff, but he's completely apart from humanity. He uses the three families as his employees, He has for human beings that he has no use. He simply says, I'm done with them. I don't care about them anymore, I think that once he himself is able to reach past this Earth to the stars, he'll have very little use for humanity. Maybe just as a pet project. There's something to be said. There's some parallel between him collecting snow globes and him also being in his own bubble, but also that the Mojave is a diorama for him. He lives vicariously through his robots. They're his eyes and ears, and every. He wants to win. He shows anger and stuff, but the same kind of anger that someone who modeled their whole army of Space Marines in the prone position would get kind of. These are toys for him. He cares. He doesn't care about the day-to-day lives of people, He doesn't care what they do with their time, well, that's not a virtue. It's not a virtue to not care the health and well-being of your subjects, whatever, that's he spins it as a virtue, and he's a good speaker, and he was written really well. But not to get too meta, he would lead humanity, but he would be apart from it. He'd be no different than a giant computer organism, and humanity would be along for the ride as long as they were useful to him. Now, nothing he has done has said anything to the contrary. I personally believe that science and technology, whether it's communist China, just expanding out and subjugating and trying to hold all the resources under their dogmas, or the U.S. expanding out and putting their faith in power armor and atomic weapons and warships and stuff, and fought by rich people who could probably, if it was available, afford something like Mr. House and be just totally detached. That doesn't speak to the humanity of the person on the ground. I think if you're going to have an autocracy, if you're not going to go to the independent Vegas, if you're going to rule over the subject, you should care for better or for worse, care about how the live and let live.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody makes this mental disconnect in their heads between how they would like them to, and how they would like to everyone around. Like, oh well, I don't do heroin. What if the guy on the street wants to do it? Okay. Well, would you invite that guy in your house to be your roommate? Oh no, because he does heroin. Well, then you're not okay with him. If you care about him, you will not let him do that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying we should do that today. I'm saying under the lens of Salo, under the lens of Caesar, that's an absolute reality. Like, okay, you guys are morally bankrupt, and your lives are meaningless. You fight with each other, you vie for power, you vie for this, that, and the other. Is it right? No, but yes, no. The right and wrong of it doesn't even into focus, but there is a focus on humanity. There is a virtue through a direction. Now that's in contrast to Mr. House. No, I'm not attacking the NCR in this, but I'm mostly saying for Mr. House, whether the interest in the subjects in a bad way, like, hey, I know you guys want to be left alone over here, but you're in this part of the land and you're property of the Legion, and we're moving forward. You're not going to object at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think the detachment of Mr. House, in that sense, is not a moral stand. You can extend the life of people, and you can give them clean water, and you can have robots serving them and stuff, and they might live longer and they might live happier. Obviously, money can't buy happiness, but tell that to someone who's wondering where their meal is going to be on the street, and in a penthouse, and they don't have to lift a finger.
I've always heard money can't buy happiness, but I'd rather cry in my BMW than on my bicycle.
Yes, that's true. Right? That's the adage. Money can't buy happiness, but it does stave off the things, at least for a time, that most people stress about making.
Yeah, they cause stress and sadness, for the most part. So, Mr. House is too detached from humanity and may not represent the best long-term goals for humanity. Who would you put your head in? I know you have a vast hat collection, and I assume that's all going to go with you to the Mojave Wasteland.
The only other serious faction, you have a faction on either side of the Mojave, of men. So if we're discounting out Mr. House, of men on either side of the Mojave, and they both want New Vegas for themselves. Well, what's the difference between those two then? And Caesar kind of says this. Caesar's like, I don't know Mr. House, all I know is he's in the way. Let's get him out of the way, and then proceed with the actual battle.
Yeah.
The NCR and Legion. And I think that's what the conversation comes to. So you have them two diametrically opposed, there isn't any politically anyway. We're not going to talk tech, because I could stand here and make the argument that a life with purpose is that lasts 40 years, or that lasts 8 is less than a life with purpose that lasts 40 years,
mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So we're not going to go with technology, life expectancy, things like. We have these two factions together. We have on one side we have an autocrat, we have a dictator. He's brutal. He makes no apologies for being brutal. On the other, what appears to be a democracy, but it's underhanded, and it's the real power lies in the oligarchs. It's an oligarchy. It's you have oligarchs, you have aristocrats. They decide who the law is enforced upon. If you're rich, you have, and those kind of people, maybe, I don't know, in contrast, whereas Mr. House was a tycoon, he didn't strong arm anybody during his lifetime out of any. He built it up himself. He even let his brother, who screwed him out of the, rather than, hey, I'm rich, I can have this guy killed, like I'm gonna go ahead and just freaking just make this all myself, and then be at the top and stuff. In the NCR, you don't have that. People recovering old technology, and you have barons who were in the right place at the right time, who are a little bit more, and they are strong arming each other, and you have these. It can be seen a lot like bankers. You have these people who aren't like doing, wielding the power, and there's disorganization, and there's confusion and stuff, and there's areas that are starving, and there's other areas that are just kind of left alone to the will of raiders. They lose areas. There's no cohesion, there's no expansion and stuff. At the political level, at the individual level, you have like absolute. There's a reason they call them the dissolute. There's entirely atomization and dissolute. And as I said, like, there's a reason that that the Legion calls the NCR citizens the dissolute.
Yeah.
Profligates, but the dissolute. Those with that, they have no virtue to do anything. Except for the followers of religion, is for the most part just so these people just like in a ditch, putting berries up their nose, trying to subsist, and you have rich elites over them ruling over.
Yeah.
Now, say what you will about Caesar, he doesn't do much fighting himself, but he, especially early on, he was on the absolute front, making sure his will was carried out to the left brutally. So, him, like Mr. House, I would say, earned his. Now, the NCR will make moral choices about whether this is right or wrong, whatever, But Caesar just appeals to, hey, very Nietzschean or Hegelian, hey, might is right. This is the conflict. This is the inevitable conflict. The winner of this, like if the NCR wins, they must have. If the Legion wins, they're. To me, you can't argue with that. You have the mistakes of the old world being repeated, fresh start from a. Now, I will say that he's very, very short-sighted in that he is in his, and this is, he has health issues in the game, as you'll see that, but his second in command doesn't share his vision for the Legion, and it's theorized that after he dies, and I believe it, the Legion will dissolve. Well, you can see that one is being short-sighted, but I think there might be some kind of, because there's an underlying spirituality, and I don't want to get too much into it, but there's an underlying spirituality. Some of it's with the legate, which I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to get into. I think there's something implied that's supposed to be supernatural about his general legate.
Yeah.
Like just something to cull, and wipe the slate clean, Linnaeus, the butcher, like I'm just going to go through and cull this. There's something supernatural, and if you play it, you might pick up, listeners, you might pick up on some of that. But I think Caesar believes, if he believes really strongly, he says in Hegel, not to contrast too much with Mr. House, but we're all players on a level. This is already, it gets kind of in the weeds where, because this conflict it's always exists.
Yeah. And
the winner and the loser and how I live or how I was always decided.
Yeah.
There might be a little bit of that in there. Isn't going to that sometime how much he would have went in if they would have flushed out, because Josh Sor's on record saying he wish he would have flushed out some of the Legion's backstory a little more.
Uh-huh.
So, except being short-sighted, I'll conclude saying I believe Legion is the spiritual successor to what humanity is, or where humanity's should win, even though Caesar's all of Caesar's methods are a little bit short-sighted.
Mm-hmm.
You care to rebuttal in reference to how I was contrasting them to?
Oh, it's just it's interesting take on things. My own value system, my own morality says a lot of what Caesar does is just, the words you used was brutal. To me, it's just evil. He practices slavery. He says, women are not fit for any other role except, I believe he calls them pack cattle at some point, or donkeys.
Well, the NCR shows that women are fit for some of those roles.
Yeah.
If you're an ultimate pragmatist, like maybe a warlord would be, he would see that men are fit better. I mean, men, like in his men. I mean, it's men have gone up against women in like the physical thing, and we all come out on top. There have been junior varsity like wrestlers, they've gone up against like world champions, and like literally just won over the women, and that's just how they're built.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not here to argue the biological differences between men and women, or who. Anything like that. I think we can both agree that a gun is a great power leveler, and the NCR does practice the use of guns.
Yeah.
But I think.
Do you suppose there's any gun that's fun that the Legion has that they're not using?
Maybe. They do use several guns. Maybe.
I'm saying, like, I want to say that their use of machetes, is a lot like how tribal warlords in Africa use machetes. Is because what they have and what they.
Maybe.
Like, hey, these better soldiers that are better shooting, they're gonna get the guns. You guys prove yourselves, and because we have nothing else except for bodies, you guys are gonna use machetes until some guns free up. That's literally how it.
Well, it seems like conquering all the way from Colorado to Arizona. I know there are military bases in that area, and maybe they weren't able to take those areas, but there's got to be something more than football lockers that they found to equip their forces, right? I would think.
I would think so.
And part of it may be just they don't have the supplies for it. Part of it may be Caesar actually believes that by like combat, hand-to-hand, brutal combat is the best way to just scare your opponent into surrender or something like that.
I think the doctrine of the hand-to-hand combat as a doctrine and the logistics play into that. Because check it out, you have you go against an enemy, right, and you defeat them, and you kill their men, and you enslave their women, and you get their boys that are young enough to be legionaries, and you take them on. Suddenly you have this huge, that's probably all beaten and stuff, and bloody, and scared. They're not the immediate like best workers. Suddenly you have a huge, because I mean it always happens when you have to take prisoners of war.
Yeah.
You have a huge population. You have to now maybe. Logistically, Caesar sees this and says, all right, well, I best to have these supplies we have. And the troops we don't have, like, hey, you guys are going to grab what we can.
Yeah.
I mean, you start to, the armor gets more elaborate. Yes, it's stylized like Roman legionaries, but the armor gets more when you get into the veterans. And I don't believe that's just, hey, I've been around the longest, and survived, by keeping my head down, I'm going to get the best gear. It's like, hey, these guys were the most brutal, I have a limited amount of resources to go around. We need to put them with the best troops.
And maybe that's the case, but I
strongly believe that it's
it just seems like it seems like the Caesar's Legion, his mentality is incredibly short-sighted, which you've brought up, and I think it's more short-sighted than either of us may think it is. In fact, that's one of the ways you can argue down the final battle. The legate at the end is once you get to the California coast, the Legion's going to turn in on itself and basically just collapse. They don't really have supply trains running. Or traders, or ways to generate new resources like farms and stuff like that. That's just, they almost take a scorched earth policy, at least that's what it seems like.
Remember though, the player character is using a check and a silver tongue to win over the NPC. The NPC, if you choose to join Caesar, there's no reason for him to lie. I mean, if you're smart enough to see through it, you still go with him. Well, you're an idiot, a sociopath.
Well, maybe, or maybe just role playing your character as that. You don't see that, or you believe Might is right and Caesar is doing the right thing, which is why you join his legion.
Well, I'm just saying the skill checks that you try to convince the legate with at the end, the idea is to be persuasive, to be a sophist, not opine on like we are, like the back and forth and stuff. That your goal is to get him to back down because you don't want to fight him, not to, wade fairly, this is kind of what's going to happen. Caesar had already planned for, like the synthesis he spoke of, to transform the legion. And people argue that, that forces need expansion. The same could be said of their economy is based on expansion. We need to expand. The U.S., the modern U.S., is based on expansion. Like they must.
But the NCR itself and the United States have infrastructure in place, have been placing and designing infrastructure and planning for the future. That infrastructure for the future. That's why we widen freeways, is to allow more traffic to go through. That's why we built telephone poles and telephone lines and all that stuff to places that don't have houses or buildings yet, is because we plan to have those houses and buildings at some point in the future.
On a small scale, yes, but if you see the kind of money, I'm not going to bring too much of my own, but I've seen the kind of money that just gets thrown away on nothing, or on a government contract to a lobbyist, maybe a Brahmin baron kind of thing. I've seen the government go in the name of just making war to make war. Like, we go there to a place and we bomb the shit out of it, knowing that we're going to be the ones footing the bill rebuilding it.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to pay for it. No, we're either going to lend them, give them money, or actually put troops on the ground there. In many cases, at the small level, yes, there's planning and stuff. But at the large level, it's largely done for greedy purposes. This is no that lobbyists don't. I mean, lobbyists like, okay, I'm this rich guy and a lobbyist, like, well, what's your citizenship? Well, I claim citizenship in X amount of countries in Europe, and in Hong Kong and in the U.S. and Canada, kind of thing. Like, well, you're rootless. You don't really have any stake here, and that's an investment in the land and the people. Contrast that with China. China will say something like, okay, we want China to survive, so we need to quarantine a quarter of our population.
Yeah.
We want China to survive, so we know in 100 years we'll have expanded our population to this level. So we need to spend this project that's going to take 60 years to move this river entirely to this new section.
Yeah.
They think in the long run, and I think despite some of the shortfallings of, like, the short-sightedness of Caesar, like we discussed, I think he has more than in mind, like China does, contrasted to the NCR, who want to expand for the sake. Is the Brahmin Baron ever going to go to Vegas? Yeah, to gamble, maybe, but he's going to be somewhere. Does he care about the people? He cares that money comes in. Maybe he cares about fame. There's no direction.
Yeah. All right. So we've been discussing this for nearly 2 hours now. So
I know, this is awful. No one's going to listen to this.
Yeah.
My sister said to tune in whenever we upload an episode.
That's the best part. So I'm going to go ahead and call this here. Who's right for the Mojave? Well, I guess it depends on what's your values, what's your morals, what you believe. And there is a little something for everyone here, it seems like.
Me and you, 5 minutes in the room. Machetes only, we'll decide.
I'm just going to throw my machete at the wall, and the wall will come down and kill us both.
Might make. I'll wait. True to Kaiser.
All right, man. Well, thank you for joining me on this discussion, and
this is fun, dude. This is fun. I jest. I love talking about this stuff.
Next week we're going to talk about. I believe we're going to talk about
modern day American heroes and how there doesn't seem to be any.
Is he a real hero? Is he a real character?
So join us next time. Go ahead and if you enjoyed the content, murder that like button, commit genocide on the subscribe button, leave us some good reviews.
Yeah, ring that bell, whatever the hell that does.
Yeah. Or don't. We don't care. Alright, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Invocation Podcast, and we will see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Invocation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and let us know. You can find a comment section usually down below, depending on where we uploaded it, or you can leave a review for us. You can follow us on one of our social media accounts. We have social media on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, MySpace. You know where to find us. Thank you.